Eagle, eagle, no rushing. Set. Ha! I got you. Down right here. Oma, Oma. Here, I know where it is. Right there. I'm in the end zone. Raven, no rushing. Set. Ha! He's the Raven. I got you. Down right here. Set. Ha!
There's no one thing that I miss most about Bubba. His hugs, his smile, his laughter, his creativity.
I think I miss his energy. I miss his abilities that I didn't recognize. After looking back and watching Cooper go through those years and now Asa, it was pretty amazing what he was able to do just on his own without us even helping, or we didn't recognize how good he was at music. We didn't recognize how good he was at water polo. We didn't recognize how mechanically inclined he was until it's not there.
He was a good big brother. He and Cooper would always pal around, and then Asa came in the picture, and he would forget how much bigger he was than Asa. Anytime we went on vacation, especially if there was water nearby, Cooper and Bubba would be in the water all the time.
He was a good older brother. We didn't really realize that. I didn't realize it until he was gone, honestly. You don't recognize a lot of things until it's too late. But he was a good pilot for Cooper and for Asa.
This is Vaughn Bigelow Jr. He is 9 months old. Vaughn likes to roll around on the floor and play in his Johnny Jump Up. His favorite foods are Cheerios and green beans.
Bubba was born July 8th, 2004. I went into labor at around 9 o'clock that night. Bubba came into the world in a very Bubba-like fashion of craziness. Bubba's umbilical cord was wrapped twice around his neck because he liked to do lots of somersaults and flips and move a lot. Nurses called him the angel baby.
He was a big fat baby. He had rolls. His joke was he had rolls on his rolls. He was always a tank. Big kid. He was also very energetic and not so troublesome, but he would definitely push the envelope. He didn't really know when to stop on a lot of things. As part of his personality, he would just go until it either broke or someone yelled at him. So that was kind of just the way he rolled. Pretty much his whole life, it was all about wheels and moving. He liked anything that had wheels. Eventually he figured out that they had engines behind wheels. But when he started, it was, Tonka trucks, then it went to bikes, then it went to skateboards, anything that rolled and moved down the street under his own power. Eventually he moved on to engines and things that he could figure out that he didn't have to pedal and they would still go forward on wheels. So anything with wheels was kind of his jam.
This is Vaughn's favorite toy. We are borrowing it from Blake. Vaughn, what does the car say? Vroom. What do you do when you back up?
Beep, beep.
Beep, beep.
He learned to ride a two-wheel bike when he was 4. He skateboarded. He rode horses. He went surfing and wakeboarding and kite surfing and like you name it, he did it. He just always loved things that moved.
I am a friend of the Bigelows for decades. We got together when our kids were really little. They were our across the street neighbors. And so I have a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old that literally grew up with the Bigelow boys. So I want to tell you a little bit about Vaughn, or Bubba, as we like to call him. Vaughn is this powerful, just all-in kind of human. So Vaughn's way of life is the way we all should live, which is just like, let's do it. And whatever the challenge, whatever the big danger that might be present, Vaughn would be like, let's go, let's do it anyway. And one of the things I really admire about Vaughn, and still to this day treasure as a memory, is just how bold and courageous that kid was. He was just all in. Whatever was happening, he's gonna do it. And if it's danger, do it anyway. He was just all about that. The other thing that is amazing about him that I just treasure and love is he is a wonderful friend. Vaughn was loyal to the end. If your kid needed something, if the kids got in an argument, if it was a bad day, it didn't matter, Vaughn was there for you. Was just an amazingly loyal friend.
So I really met Meghan first. We met through a health and wellness company that we were part of, Advocare, and I was introduced to her through a mutual friend and instantly connected with Meghan. That summer, our kids were all in swim team together. So my daughter, Lila, was in swim team with all 3 boys that summer. I remember laughing when we were at swim practice together. Vaughn was very competitive, very driven. And he would swim his heart out, and then he'd come out and he's like, let's go home, I need a nap. I'm a teenage boy. And he just would make us laugh.
I met Vaughn in college. We were in the same freshman dorm on the same hall, though he was on one side, I was on the extreme opposite side. And he had swim practice a lot, I remember, so I didn't really get to know him until we pledged the same fraternity. He became one of my closer friends. I would say he's one of my best friends to this day. We ended up at the same place in 2018 for spring break before the tragedy happened, just by coincidence. We both didn't plan it. We just ended up both in Hawaii, and I'm grateful since it gave us some pretty amazing memories of hanging out with Bubba and the family, and my girls hanging out and just having a good time with the Bigelows.
I first met the Bigelows, it was actually Vaughn. He joined the triathlon team over at Lifetime Fitness, and that was 2016. And we trained and competed together we still are today. I remember my favorite memory of Vaughn Jr. was seeing him at the Boulder Ironman and high-fiving all the athletes as they passed by. And I remember Vaughn talking about after the race and how excited he was and how neat he thought it was what people were doing.
We met in preschool. I think it was 11 going on 12 years that we had been friends. We'd go skiing a lot. They had a place in Beaver Creek and we were both skiers, so some pretty fond memories going up there with him. He was a good partner to ski with. Always was a really fun time. Have some really fun memories of that. Whether it was hanging out in the neighborhood with some other friends, my house, their house, anywhere. Spending a lot of time together over the summers. We like to talk about cars a lot.
I met Vaughn in kindergarten at Apple Tree, and I knew him his whole life, all the way through 7th grade at Rocky Top. We were always close. One of the things I remember the most for some reason is one time I was here hanging out for a long time, and we were just sitting by his pool on his pool chairs and just talking for a long time. That's one of the things I remember the best.
He always used to go, I'm a very important businessman with a very important briefcase.
What do you miss about him most?
Probably him doing that.
So we're at the Veterans Memorial Aquatic Center in Thornton, Colorado, where Vaughn used to come and play water polo all the time.
Vaughn was 10 years old when he started water polo. He did a clinic in the summer, and he came home and he was like, I loved it. I'm playing water polo.
Oh, Bubba, go get it.
Vaughn would have practice 2 to 3 times a week, sometimes on weekends, sometimes all weekend long. So behind us, the Rocky Mountain Neptunes are practicing water polo. That was the club that Vaughn played on. As you can see, it's an extremely difficult sport where kids are trying not to drown, and when they actually playing another team, they're trying to drown each other. Vaughn loved it. It was fantastic for his mental health. He loved the action, chasing the ball, the interaction with the other kids. It was a fantastic sport for him.
Vaughn wanted to play on the Olympic developmental team, and you have to try out, and there's multiple weekends to try out, and we have to travel for those. And he would spend the weekend playing water polo for Olympic coaches to try and make that team, which he did, and he got to play with the Mountain Zone Olympic team. The day was June 14th, 2018. We woke up, got the boys up, breakfast.
It was a beautiful summer day, and we'd been away for a few weeks, and it just kind of got settled back in. And
we went to swim practice, and the air conditioning in my truck, my Suburban, wasn't working anymore, and it was like upper 90s, and they were begging to go into the cafe and have smoothies, so I let them have smoothies that day.
Went, hit some golf balls, tried it for the first time in a long time, and hit, probably 30 or 40 golf balls, and then went to work. Just a standard routine day. We came back home. I told them we had X amount of time before we had to leave to go to the dentist, go see Dr. Sean.
So the boys, the 3 boys, Vaughn, Cooper, and Asa were my patients. So our patients at the practice, they saw myself and Dr. Nell, my partner. And so leading up to the event, they were just my patients. Like I see thousands and thousands of patients, but some of them you remember, and some for good reasons, some for bad reasons. Vaughn had a big trauma and broke front tooth, and he wasn't exactly the easiest patient to work on.
But we got in the car, and since it was 8 million degrees outside, we had the windows down. We're at a light. I can hear sirens. And Cooper's in the front with me, and so our light turned, sirens behind us, and Cooper's watching, and he goes, they're going straight through the light. So I knew they were coming up behind us. I put my directional on, and I was gonna get over. As I was looking over, I was like, oh, someone's there. Kind of started, but didn't, came back into my lane, and I was like, oh, sorry. And they started screaming at me. So I was like, I was getting out of their way. Keep going, and still getting screamed at, yelled at. And all of a sudden we're in a construction zone, so it goes down from like 3 lanes to 1. The other driver is directly behind me. And Cooper's like, they're behind us. I was like, it's all right. Can't do anything about it. We're all in 1 lane anyway. And then it spread out. The other driver stayed behind me, fairly close behind. And Cooper's like, they're still back there. I'm like, okay. And then we had stopped at another lane. You can hear them still screaming. And then we got the light by Children's Dentistry, and I was going to turn left. We're waiting at the light, and Cooper goes, they're turning too. Eventually turned green, turned left, made it right into the parking lot and parked. And they look back and say, just followed us into the parking lot. So he parked behind us, and boys are like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna get out of the car and go in. The other driver was screaming at me still. And I was like, I was getting out of the way for an emergency vehicle. And he kept screaming at me. And I just remember the boys, like, we were trying to walk in, and the other driver was screaming, and the boys were just like, what, like deer in headlights. I remember getting upset and yelling back, and he eventually was going to start pulling out of the parking lot. And I took my phone out, and I thought I took a picture of his license plate. And I was like, we'll see what the cops think about that. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, cops aren't going to care. He hasn't done anything. And then he, like, backed up. And I was back up on the sidewalk by the boys, and I see him lean over and grab a gun from the passenger side and get out. And I remember yelling at the boys, he's got a gun, run. And I started walking away from the boys in between cars to try thinking that he'll follow me. And then the next thing I know, I was shot in the back, and I fell on my face on the pavement, and I blacked out. And then I woke up again, and there was still more gunfire. Like, sure, it was in and out. More gunfire, and then I remember thinking, just maybe he'll think I'm dead and he won't shoot me again. But that didn't work. He shot me in the head when I was already down. And then the last thing I remember in the parking lot was Cooper's voice crouched down by me saying, "Mom, Mom." And I knew I couldn't say, "I'm okay." I couldn't lie. So I said, "I can hear you." And that was the last thing I remember in the parking lot.
Sounds like it's shots fired in a dentist office.
The victims were shot in this parking lot. Meghan Bigelow with her 3 children, Vaughn, Cooper, and Asa, followed here after a case of road rage.
I was back in the farthest back corner that you could be from the front door. You heard some loud noises, and then you heard a stampede of people, and like, you knew in a second something was drastically wrong, because there was a huge panic. I mean, I didn't know exactly what was going on, and all of a sudden everyone that was in the front of the office and everywhere else funneled to the area where I was, because that's where the emergency exit is. So it went from, I'm giving this girl an injection, to complete and total panic. Someone saying there's a shooter out front. Like, I don't know any information other than someone's shooting and we got to get everyone out of the building. It was just such a foreign thing to happen in that environment, in that setting, at that time of day, at this place in the world. The parking lot of a pediatric dental office at early afternoon is not what you would think. And I couldn't move. I'm sitting on that back porch, I'm talking to the 911 operator, I'm seeing my staff and patients, like, no one knows what to do. They're looking for someone to tell them what to do. And then this young, early 20-some-year-old kid who's working for me is like, we gotta go help. And so we open the door, and it's just dead quiet. It's just, like, it's so eerie. It's like some sort of movie that you would watch. And I look out, and I see Meghan down. And then there was another young man that was working for me named Flavio, who had some military training, and he was in a different part of the office when it happened. And we went out, and Flavio's kneeled down next to Asa. And Asa was semi-conscious. So we go out there, and he pulls up Asa's shirt, and everything that was in Asa's stomach is now out. And then we rolled him over, and he's got this little pinhole in his back. And we didn't even know at the time that he'd been shot in the head, because I just assumed, and he was coughing. He's actively coughing up blood. So Ace is still alive, and I saw Meghan over on the. I've apologized to her since. I never went to her because I thought she was dead, and she was kind of face down, and there was blood by her mouth, and then we ended up going over to Vaughn, and Vaughn had obviously been shot in the head, and we started to do CPR on him. Kelly from my front desk, I believe, Dr. Nell, Josh, who works next door, starts CPR on Vaughn. I have like a bag on him, and then the police came in, fully drawn weapons, because they don't know who's who, and so they secure the perimeter. So we're doing all this stuff. We're trying. I mean, futile attempt. We're trying. They kept trying to do CPR, get him stable. We got him on a board. We carried him to the ambulance. Somebody else carried Asa and Megan. And within credit to the police department and the fire department. They were there so quick. And within seconds, what felt like seconds, it was over. Everyone was loaded up, gone. And then I remember just standing there. I'm standing there, I have scrub pants on and a t-shirt, and my forearms down are just blood everywhere.
I got a phone call in the afternoon. It was probably 2 in the afternoon or so, maybe 3 o'clock, from Cooper, which was strange, but answered the call and said, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" And he said, "Mom's been shot." And it didn't register, didn't make any sense. I had to try to figure out where they were because I didn't even know, where they were. And they said the dentist office, and I had not been to the dentist office, and so that didn't mean anything to me. So I got at least an address, and I had asked Cooper where his brothers were, and he didn't know, and that he didn't know. He assumed they were in the other dentist office, and so I remember literally just running out the door, jumped in my car and started driving. And I remember traffic was awful. I didn't know whether I should drive down the median. I didn't know whether I should, I couldn't go anywhere. It was such a helpless feeling. And I didn't know anything other than Meghan had been shot. So I just went as fast as I could, without getting into a car crash ultimately. So, and drove to the scene. The whole intersection, everything was closed off, and I remember flying up the median, threw my car in park because I couldn't get anywhere else, and started running towards the scene, and almost got tackled by a police officer because they didn't know who I was. And so I tried to explain to the guy that it was, my wife had been shot, and he was a little deer in headlights too, because he didn't quite know how to handle me. And so he sat me down on the ground basically and made some radio calls and such and said, "You need to go to the police station." So I went to the police station from there, without anybody. I didn't know where Cooper was. I didn't know, where anyone was. So I just had to go to the police station and wait. They, started questioning me a little bit as to, where I was and what I had done, and if we had any, I think they use the word enemies, anyone that might want to do this to your family, and questions like that, and made me kind of sit in an interrogation room. And they finally got Cooper and I together, and they wouldn't give any information about his brothers or Meghan. And then they interrogated Cooper for about an hour by himself, which was really hard. They were able to tell me that Meghan and one of the boys were at Denver Health, and another one was on his way to Children's Hospital. So I had, at that point I figured out that the other 2 boys had been shot also. But that's all they would tell me was that they were on their way to the hospital. They didn't actually tell me that they were shot, but I assumed. And they told me that Meghan was at Denver Medical, or Denver Health. So I went there and met police officers outside to escort me in to where she was, or actually to a holding room. They wouldn't let me see her, but to a holding room. And when the chaplain comes in, it's bad. I didn't know what I was going to be told. It was hours later. They had taken Cooper away to go get a stuffed animal type thing, and they sat me down and told me that Vaughn was dead.
New developments in the deadly confrontation near Denver. Police say it was sparked by road rage. An angry driver targeting a mother and her children. One of the children was shot and killed. Tonight, that driver, formerly charged with murder, and ABC's Clayton Sandell is in Denver.
Police say it began as a case of road rage.
Active shooter idiot in Sheridan. They do have 4 victims so far.
Meghan Bigelow was on her way to a dentist appointment with her 3 kids when police say 23-year-old Jeremy Webster chased them to this Westminster, Colorado office complex, allegedly shooting Meghan, 2 of her sons, and a bystander. Her 13-year-old son, Vaughn, did not survive.
Originally, I heard about it in the news. I had heard that there had been a shooting at a dental office. But as I'm driving along, I get a call initially from my dear friend and neighbor, Erin, and I knew it was terrible by her voicemail. She left a voicemail, just call me back, and I thought, okay, what happened? And she said, you know, there's been an accident, and we don't know if Meghan's gonna make it.
Got a text from a friend saying something happened to the Bigelows, wasn't sure, but it sounds like somebody might have been shot. We eventually found out that it was what it was. Meghan was shot and the 2 boys were shot. Then eventually found out Bubba had died.
I first heard about the shootings. I was back in Iowa actually visiting my family, and my phone the morning after, I had like 50 text messages, and actually the night before it was on the news in Des Moines. It had made it that far already.
I was out to dinner with my family in a busy restaurant, so I actually missed the first call. And then I got a few texts in a row from that same friend saying, call me as soon as possible, call me. And so I took my phone outside the restaurant, out front, and called her back, and she said, oh, Meghan's been shot. And I don't remember a lot about that phone call because who gets that phone call? It was awful. And she said, and boys were shot too. And as I'm waiting for her to call me back with more details, I was looking up all the news articles, reading about what happened, and just losing it in front of the restaurant. It was the worst call I've ever received. And then when she did call me back, it was to tell me that Bubba had died and that Meghan and Asa were in the hospital, and they didn't know more than that.
That night, myself and 2 of our good friends bought plane tickets to go see Vaughn and see how we could help. We had no idea what we were going to do. We just wanted to be there for him and for the family.
When I first heard about it, you know, probably like many other people, just like, that can't be right. That's not the Bigelows I know. That would never happen. Just, I guess, kind of that denial, and then just like the cold sinking feeling of reality just setting in, and feeling completely helpless to do anything. Like, there's nothing anybody could do to make that better for anybody, and it was really hard.
Couldn't think, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything but pace and wait. And I got a call from Vaughn saying, Vaughn has passed away. And again, I'll remember those words the rest of my life. And I said, what can I do? And he said, you know, I hate to ask you this, but can you come down here? And this has been a long day for Cooper. Can you come get Cooper?
I had to tell Cooper that his brother had been killed. I had to try to update him that his mom and brother were still alive, but in serious or critical condition. And so I had to work on trying to find a place for him to go that was safe and comfort him, but also understand what was going on with Meghan and understand what was going on with Asa and process the fact that Vaughn was gone. So it was just surreal. I look back and I don't even know how I processed, or if I processed, or what I processed. I remember collapsing on the floor at one point, just not knowing what to do.
When did you first learn about Asa's condition?
It wasn't really till later that night. My sister was at Children's Hospital, and we were trying to relay messages, and they didn't have good answers for him to offer to my sister and mom because they were doing everything they could to keep him alive. I know that Meghan was shot twice, once in the head, once in the abdomen. Asa was hit in 4 different places, and I don't know if it was 3 or 4 bullets, but once in the head, once in the abdomen, once to the arm, and his other arm was hit also. And Vaughn Jr., I know he was shot multiple times. I know he was down when the shooter came back. Both Meghan and Asa were technically dead at one point. Both of them, I think multiple times for Asa. Asa went to one hospital first where they could at least get him sort of stabilized to put him on Flight for Life down to Children's. From a blood units, the ICU nurse told me that they basically just opened the spigot to try to, until they could get some things repaired, and found out later from an ENT who was his savior, Dr. Chan, that he had a piece of shrapnel in his throat.
Dr. Chan, an ENT, walks in because he forgot his credentials. He had actually left for the day, was out of his car, realized he left his credentials and his pass back in the operating area, and he had walked back in to get it, and they pulled him into Asa's surgery to be like, why can't we stop his bleeding? And Dr. Chan said there's probably bullet fragments in his nasal passage.
That when they intubated him, it actually sliced his throat open, and that's where all the blood was. They couldn't stop the bleeding, and they finally found this piece of shrapnel that was jammed down in there that had been accidentally jammed in there. They could finally get the bleeding stopped, but they literally were about to quit because they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. They couldn't get it stopped, and he kept losing, and his blood pressure kept going to 0 because they couldn't put blood in him fast enough.
We strongly believe the reason Ace is here is because Dr. Chan forgot his ID card and had to walk back into the hospital.
Meghan was also, at one point, her heart had stopped. She had lost blood pressure completely because of her, it had nicked her aorta, I believe. Fortunately, on that shift, she was taken care of by a gentleman named Dr. Fox, who was a war veteran and a triage, unit. And he did things that you would not normally do to a patient, but he had experience from war type wounds, and that's what this was. And he tried something that he had done one other time, and it worked.
I was losing so much blood that Dr. Fox clamped my aorta so the blood would stay basically in my brain.
It kept the blood in her brain and minimized brain damage and until they could get the bleeding stopped and things put back together, and then he released the clamp again so it could pump through.
And if he didn't do that, who knows if I would be able to walk and talk today.
So just 2 extraordinary doctors that we were lucky were on staff at the time.
This guy actually killed 3 people that day. It's just that the medical community was able to save 2 of them.
I was shot twice. I was shot once in the back and went through my torso, so I have an entry wound and an exit wound. And then I was shot in the back of the head, and it ricocheted and went through my earlobe. I believe I've had 5 surgeries, not near as many as Asa. Because of the injuries in my torso, they actually took out my appendix and a third of my large intestine. And then because of my being shot in the head, brain injury, there's a nerve that comes from your brain to your face. It was being compressed, and so my whole side of my face was not moving. There was a period of time where I literally couldn't eat. There was actually a blood clot sitting on my stomach, I have something called aphasia, where you can't remember words. Being shot in the head and coming through my earlobe and everything, I can't actually hear out of my right ear. So now, overall, physically, I'm normal. Never gonna be what I was pre-injuries. I still have, I notice it more than anyone else. My face doesn't work the same. And every once in a while there's brain injury moments. We always used to joke about #brain injury. And people are like, you can't use that excuse anymore. I'm like, oh, I can use that excuse for the rest of my life. Totally. Asa's injuries were more significant, probably because of his size. He was only 7 when he was shot 4 times. He also was shot in the back. There's actually still a bullet fragment that sits next to his spine. And they can't actually tell where it is because he can't do an MRI because he has so many bullet fragments in him. He was shot in the head. He was shot in the arm. And his other arm was grazed. He used to be right-handed, but because he was shot in the right arm, he is now left-handed. Because of the injury to his back and spine, he actually has left leg weakness. For the longest time, his left leg was actually hypersensitive. You couldn't touch it. He had a trach because he had such significant injury to his nasal passage and soft palate. He can't, like, we can all breathe through our nose. We don't think anything of it. For Asa to breathe through his nose, he literally has to sit there and think and concentrate. And his, probably because in his development, his brain injury, it took him longer to recover. There's still things he struggles with, executive function, words, things along those lines, but he's come a long, long way. The verdict is out on amount of surgeries for Asa.
I think I'm up to 24. I lost track after a while.
I believe he's at 25. He will be in probably physical therapy, definitely through when he grows. We do intensives about twice a year, which is an 8-week, twice a week, and there's goals, and it's hard. He's doing stuff that most adults will never want to do. And there's times it's hard and he cries and he gets frustrated and shuts down, and there's times he powers through and crushes that day. He just is amazing.
My life that day moving forward for probably the next 5 weeks, I believe it was, 4 to 5 weeks. I never came home. I lived in hospitals, but I would sleep at Children's at night because they would let me sleep in the room with Asa. Before my family made me go home, I honestly didn't want to come home because it was, I felt like everyone should be there. So, but I did eventually come home, and then it was come home at, after the shift change at Children's Hospital. I'd be back on the road the next morning at 6, so I could get there at the shift change from second to, night to day, find out how the night went. And I would I did that for another, until end of August, into September that year when Asa finally came home.
I was in about 55 days. Asa was in about 75 days, I think. It was a long time. Long time.
You find out a lot about people when things like this happen. You end up having new friends. You have friends come out of the woodwork, which you wouldn't expect, the acquaintances, if you will. You have friends that disappear, that can't deal with it, don't know how to deal with it. So its community was amazing in all. There was, people just wanted to help.
They would just show up and do stuff. Neighbors came and would weed. People would bring Vaughn food because for the longest time he didn't leave the hospitals. He would sleep at Children's, shower at Children's, be there in the morning, come see me, go back.
But I had tremendous support from people would bring me food, people would bring me clean clothes, take my clothes, wash them, because I didn't care. Obviously, that was not what was important.
There was a lot of support for Vaughn. People would just be like, we're downstairs. So he could go down and talk to someone that wasn't a medical person for 5 minutes.
And there would be people in the lobby. I'd come downstairs and there'd be, people from my triathlon team sitting there. They'd be working from the lobby, just waiting to help. I had friends fly out and stay and help transport people. So it was amazing. It's an amazing community. So, and group of friends that we have. We're headed to the McKay Bike Park, which is down the street from our house. Vaughn used to spend a lot of time there. He could ride his bike down, meet buddies, kind of feel some independence as a preteen and then as a teenager. Definitely loved going down there. He said hanging out with his buddies, riding his mountain bike, trying to figure out how to do new tricks, things like that. Take his GoPro down there. Part of the bike park that was dedicated to him after he passed by the city of Broomfield. There's a memorial bench that we'll see here in a little bit that I like to go and visit. Whenever I'd run through there, stop and take a minute. Swing in his bike park a little bit, swing in his bench at the bike park, watch the kids. There was a group of people who put together a memorial at the bike park because everyone knew how important it was to him. After everything happened that summer, there were, I think, hundreds of people. They did a balloon release, and unfortunately I wasn't there because I was still in the hospitals with Meghan and Asa at the time, but I saw video footage and saw it on the news and talked to friends, and it was a good way for his friends to, get together and talk about things and share their emotions, things like that. This is the park. This is where we'd come hang out with his friends and try not to get hurt, land on his head. But yeah, this is where he would spend a lot of his time. This bench was dedicated and put in place by some of our friends who all knew Vaughn, and they worked with the city to have this bench put in his memorial because this is one of his favorite places to be. So I'll come to here and just hang out, almost talk to him. Do a little maintenance on it, tighten the bolts, but it's super cool. The GoFundMe was set up by some of Meghan's friends, and started to look at it, and there was a tremendous outpouring from, again, all over the world. It was random people. I wanted to push back and say, I don't need this. Someone else needs this more than I do financially, but I was told just let it happen and let people help. And I was also warned that you're going to be surprised on costs that you haven't even thought about yet, and that was true. There were a lot of long-term costs that I wasn't even thinking about, which it certainly helped with. But by and large, I knew what I could do was take it and use it for something else, which is how we funded Big Waves to start.
So it actually stands for Bring Impact Globally with a Very Energetic Smile. And Big, it's also Bigelow, Waves, Bubba Loved Water. So the embodiment of big waves is all Bubba.
I had been given an opportunity, and that life is way too short. You learn a lot about life in times like this and how fragile it is. And I wanted to do something better. There were so many people that helped us, and whether it was doctors, nurses, the community, we wanted to do, I personally wanted to do something to give back to the community that supported us in the time of need. We decided to look at water polo because, we said we wanted to be in commemoration of Vaughn, and this is what he loved to do, and it was helpful for him, and it's be helpful for our community. So we attacked that, and then the natural thing was safe gun storage and, training. Almost everything we do has a specific reason. Blood drives we do because there was so much blood used to save Meghan and Ace's lives. So that's something that's near and dear to our hearts, and we know it's necessary for the community and the hospitals. Our gun lock program is that anyone who registers on our website can get a gun lock for free. And I look at it every time I mail a gun lock out, saying this could be the gun lock that saves someone's life. I could think that about every single gun lock, and the hope is that it will make someone pause when they're thinking about doing something bad.
What can people do to help big waves?
People can donate money, or they can buy gun locks, because every gun locked is another life saved.
That's awesome.
I miss having him around, just a pal. We spent a lot of time together. Miss him every day. I let him know how much I think about him and how much I miss him. It's kept me up at night. I've definitely gotten emotional over it at random times. Haven't forgot, don't plan on forgetting. I miss him every day, more and more. Make sure he knows he's missed and loved.
You just can't emphasize enough how good of a person he really was, and just how caring he was, and how great of a friend. And I think about him a lot, especially this year, senior year. It's hard to think about him. I miss him a lot, yeah.
What I miss most is that big smile. To this day, I keep thinking he's gonna walk in and I'm gonna be like, hey, Bubba, and just give him one of those big hugs. He was just a light and a sign that all is well with the world if he's here, right? So to this day, I picture him just walking in my front door. So I miss that the most.
What is hard as a mom, since Bubba was killed when he was 13, is things seeing Cooper do now. Driving. Oh, Bubba loved to drive.
Miss what he could have been. Just don't know. So it's hard.
High school, graduation, college, and seeing his brothers grow up. That's probably the hardest of the what would it be like if he was still here.
Why couldn't the toilet paper make it across the road? Because it got stuck in a crack. Why was the mushroom the life of the party? Because he was such a fun guy.
Don't call me strong. I have no choice. I'm a mom and wife. A mom and wife does not stop. She can take 5, 10, 30 minutes for self-care, but never stops. No luxury to lay around and wallow. She has 2 breathing kids and a husband to orbit around. Life doesn't halt to allow her heart to break. A picture, a death certificate, an engraved iPod, an ornament, a Facebook memory, a dream, each interrupts her day. A tsunami wave of grief tumbles her to her knees. Salty tears pull on the floor, deep racking breaths. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Blotched face, tear-stained cheeks, swollen eyes. She stands. Laundry, cooking, carpool, cleaning, wrapping presents, sending holiday cards, conference calls, social media posts, organizing, doctor's appointments, minute by minute, hour by hour. She faces each day as only a mother can. Don't call me strong. I have no choice. I'm a mom and a wife.